All right, TikTok, time to rock. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are having all kinds of technical difficulties here. We couldn't connect to Vocab's computer on Skype, so we got him on his cell phone. The sound's a little bit rougher than his normal microphone. We'll get that fixed by next time. But basically, I just got home from the movie, so we didn't have a lot of time to troubleshoot. Vocab, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. I'll do my best to be seen and heard tonight.
Hey,
No spoil.
hey, you wear those dumb glasses, and now we can see the reflection.
Don't you like it? Not if I angle it just right. Look.
Do you even see what you look like? Your head takes up the whole entire screen.
Here, let me scoot it back then.
Yeah, but then how are we gonna hear the melodious sound of your voice?
You just can't be pleased, man.
Oh, no. You sound good. You sound better like that.
Oh,
all right, ready?
There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So how's everyone doing? I just got back. Yes. Here we have Alan Rule. Avengers. Yes. I saw Avengers. How many of you have seen Avengers? You probably couldn't because I'm on the East Coast and I saw it at the earliest showing tonight. So you either saw it exactly when I saw it and then you came home and logged on, or I'm the only one here who's seen it. How many people here have seen it? You say you're not seeing it until Saturday, Vocab?
Saturday morning.
Haha. Better close your ears until then.
I'm not really that worried about all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, you're not worried about the spoilers. So after we go off live, I can spoil everything.
I don't care. It's not that big of a deal to me. Depends if you want.
Hey, look at this. Jonathan says you couldn't pay me to watch Avengers. Oh my goodness. Well, it was the best superhero movie of all time.
Was it?
Yep. I would have put Dark Knight first, and then there's a few others I like The Winter Soldier. I liked that one. Most people don't put this at near the top of their list, but X-Men: Days of Future Past I really liked. What? Come on, man! You got the Quicksilver scene. You got mainly everyone died. I like movies where everyone dies, and of course they fixed it and brought everyone back in Days of Future Past, but everyone was dying in the future and stuff like that. Then they fixed it anyway. So I like movies like that. But no, this Avengers Endgame just blows them all out the water, just so everyone knows. And man, that place was a zoo.
Yeah?
It was a zoo. I've never seen the theater that packed. We got there. I was posting a video, so I got there like 10 minutes. So we were kind of late. I would like to have been there like 20, 25 minutes ahead of the time for the opening of a movie like that. But I was posting a video, so we got there like 10 or 12 minutes before it started. And the only seats were in the very front row. The only available seats were in the very front row. The parking lot was packed. Everything was like a giant zoo. So, but awesome. I'll just do one spoiler. I'll just do one spoiler for Christian R here. He said no spoilers, please. All I'll say is Wolverine. Ching ching. Universes collide. Universes collide. Time travel. Universes collide. Wolverine. Ching ching. No, I'm just kidding, guys. I don't give spoilers. I give fake spoilers. Huh?
It's actually a pretty good fake spoiler, though.
Yeah. I normally give the fake spoilers. Do you remember years ago when I fake spoiled Rogue One? And I said, oh man, when Yoda showed up out of nowhere at the end and saved everyone, that was, the audience lost their mind. And I actually had a Christian like curse me out. Like, F you, I'm blocking all your channels and blocking this. And I mean, he flipped out and lost it. It was totally fake. It was totally fake. Everyone died. But, yeah. So, yeah, guys, I don't give spoilers. I give fake spoilers. But here, I don't even want to dishonor the movie with a fake spoiler because it was awesome. All right, vocab. So, we're going to be talking about something now. Why don't you introduce the topic for us? Because vocab, several people messaged me and said, "Hey, there's this Muslim dude who killed his family," and they sent me an article. They sent me a news article, which I should have pulled up, but I'll just tell you what it said. Basically said that this guy had killed his wife and his kids, and what was it, his brother or something like that, and.
Yep.
And then later in the article, it was an interview with his cousin, and his cousin said, "Yeah, he's a Muslim, so but you know he shouldn't have been doing this for God or something like that." Does that sound about right? Is that what you heard?
Well, that's the people that were incorrectly repeating the story. That's what they were saying. Yeah, mm-hmm. And I know why. I know the source of how this all happened.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Let me see if I can get the light a little bit better.
We don't care about the light. Everything is sound, vocab. Everything is sound.
All right. Well,
we understand the sound is going to be good. And for everyone who's tuning in right now, we mentioned a few minutes ago we had some technical problems. We couldn't get on Skype on vocab's computer where he has his mic, so he's talking through his phone right now. So we understand the sound is going to be a little lower quality than normal. We'll have that fixed for the future. But yeah, we hear you, vocab. So go ahead and talk.
All right. Well, one way to start is by looking at one of the more up-to-date articles from AZ Central. I'll look at that in a second and kind of comment on it. But the short version of why some people spread a rumor that he was a Muslim was because in one of the news interviews, there was a very brief interview with Deja Patterson, God rest her soul. By the way, I'm still trying to raise support for her fundraiser. She was the wife who was murdered along with her 2 daughters. In one of the interviews, the cousin was interviewed. Yeah,
that's what I recall. Well, I recall from reading it in the news article, but you're saying he was actually in video?
Yeah, he was actually in video. Okay. And it was pretty evident and clear that he knew Austin Smith. This is the accused of a quadruple homicide and attempted murder on 2 more. And he has already admitted to it. Mm-hmm. But he knew he was religious. It was clear from that. And most of the lead stories had something like, God said it was okay, God told me to do it, something like that. And he said, he's a Muslim and I'm a Muslim and we don't move like that. Something along those lines. Now, it's actually a pretty common thing when people don't understand Hebrew Israelism, even people close to think they're Muslims. I'll give you a perfect example. The Covington High School parents, they were reporting in the media, some of them, that these Muslim guys were bothering our children.
Yeah.
They did not understand what they were dealing with. And they made the correct assumption. The cousin also did not understand Austin Smith's religion and made an incorrect assumption as well, and that's what he said. And the reason I know this is because of up-close personal contact with Austin Smith and his Hebrew Israelite camp. He was not a Muslim. To my knowledge, he's never been a Muslim. He's been involved with Hebrew Israelism for over a decade now. This is not a new, at least 10 years that I can track. And for the past 3 years, I've had several interactions with him, as well as with his camp. And in fact, you came pretty close to having some sort of an interaction with him yourself, because the day we went out to shoot one of the videos for Islamicize Me, we happened upon their camp. Not the purple and gold guys from the day that was called More Dawa. It was that we were doing Dawa. When we had signs talking about squat to pee and all that, that camp called Yahweh Servants in Israel, or sometimes called Yahweh Servants in Phoenix, that camp is the same camp Austin Smith was a part of. And one of the men who was in the background of the shot of Islamicize Me was murdered by Austin. And the camp leader,
like in previously murdered, or that's one of the guys that was murdered in this.
One of the guys Austin killed.
So one of the guys in our video, basically, so those of you who watched Islamicize Me, there were 2 times when we kind of rolled up on some Hebrew Israelites, and in one of them we just kind of we were practicing our dawah, and so we're kind of walking back and forth in front of them with signs that say things like "kill your dogs" and squat to pee and things like that, things that we find in the Muslim sources. So we're walking back and forth, and there are I think there were only three guys there, something like that. Three?
Yep. Out of the 3 guys in that shot, David, one is now dead, one went to the hospital for injuries, and the other guy's been commenting on my videos. The other guy's been coming on my videos, commenting on them. So there are 3 guys.
Like attacking you, or?
Yes, because the charge by the Hebrew Israelites is that I've used this story to smear them all, or something like that. But there's a few things about that. One is it's incorrect for people to blame Muslims if a Muslim didn't do it, or to blame Islamic theology, however you want to put that. But either way, it's incorrect to say this guy something something Muslim, this guy something something Allah, this guy something something Muhammad, if he's not a practitioner of Islam. That's incorrect. That's not right. Well, that's the reason. And so I went and commented on a lot of the news stories where they would show a video and say the truth. I copied and pasted a comment there. And I broke the story in a sense. What I mean by that is no one had reported on the nature of the religious angle. Almost every story reported on the religious angle, but it almost sounded as if he got a revelation from God that told him to go kill his family. That is not what happened. There was a PR person for the Phoenix PD. He got closest when he relayed one of the words of the detectives who interviewed Austin, because Austin was very forthright and admitted thing apparently. He said, Austin said in his eyes, in God's eyes, that is, in God's eyes, this was okay because this is how someone in his religion is supposed to be dealt with. That puts, the second I heard that, I saw his face and I said, this guy looks really familiar, and I confirmed it before I came out with the story. So they've been being upset. But by God's grace, again, Ron Freeman is one of the men that was in our Islamicizing video. On day 16, it's Dawah time. He is now dead. He was murdered by one of his...
Killed by one of his own cell of Hebrew Israelites.
Yeah, no, that's a key word. Not just one of his, ideology or religion. Literally someone in his camp. Someone he would be out on the street with every Saturday by our block. I mean, you were out on that block. You saw how close that is to my house. I'm not driving far away. We're just walking down the street, basically. And the way it went down is this. Austin had already murdered his wife and 2 of his 3 daughters. This is a horrible story. This is that's why. No,
it's bad.
This is.
I just wanted to comment on it real quick, guys, because we've got the Islamic terrorist attack. We're talking about this because. Well, again, several people sent me this story and wanted me to make a video about this Islamic terrorist attack. And I didn't because I went to the story. I clicked on the story and I read it. And, if I deal with Islam, then I don't want to really report a story about some guy who just went crazy or something like that and went on a killing spree, right? Because, so think about it. If we talk about the terrorist attacks that happened in Sri Lanka, right? That was a coordinated, well thought out attack by a group of devout Muslims, right? Guys who were ready to lay down their lives and who became convinced, based on studying Islam's most trusted sources, that the greatest thing they can do in life, because that's what the Muslim sources say, the greatest thing they can do in life is die while waging jihad against unbelievers, right? So if we're talking about Islam and we want to get to the heart of an attack, then that's something that I want to talk about and want to talk about it a lot. If some guy just loses his mind and kills a bunch of people, then even if he were a Muslim, that's not really a story I would want to talk about if it's not connected to his ideology. So I didn't pay much attention, but then I saw Vocab commenting that this guy wasn't a Muslim, he was a Hebrew Israelite. And the reason that's relevant is, well, if this guy was saying, hey, I had to kill them and I had to kill my kids because of this or that, well, I know Islam. I don't think in Islam you should be, slaughtering your own kids or something like that for crying over their mother's death. But I don't know about I don't know enough about the Black Hebrew Israelites to know whether that's something that they would do. So vocab, my question here would be, is this a case of a guy losing his mind and going on a killing spree that is unconnected to his ideology, right? Because keep in mind, guys, anyone could do that, right? A Christian could do that. A Christian could be paranoid and think that his wife's cheating and just go on a killing spree. An atheist could do that. A Muslim could do that. A Buddhist could do that. Anyone could have a really, really bad temper, lose his mind, and go on a killing spree. So the question is this something that is just a guy it's not connected to his ideology? He just went on a killing spree, or is this connected with his religion?
Well, a few things. Remember, he did say that he was doing this for his religious beliefs. Now, after this happened and I reported on it, here's the answer. I watched every response video I could by his former camp. Because previously to joining Yahushai's servants in Phoenix, or Yahushai servants in Israel, he had been a part of the great Millstone Israelites. That, ironically, is the very first group I encountered here in Phoenix almost a decade ago or so, however long it's been now, that got me really doing more stuff with the Hebrew Israelites. They're sort of the worst of the worst of the worst. They kicked him out. They said he was a bug out. That's their term. So they want to make sure everyone knows they've already kicked him out. And I recognize that. He was not part of GMS at the time of this murder. He was a... And what this shows us is that ex-members of GMS are the worst. Here's what I mean by that. This is the second instance I know where an ex-GMS member had been in some way disassociated from the camp because of bad behavior. And GMS is so wild and vile that if they kick you out, that means you're really messed up. They literally tolerate anything. They tolerate people hitting people on the street. Just watch the Bay Area camp videos titled America's Most Hated Group or something like that. They tolerate talking about raping children in the kingdom, but they say they're not children because they've come of age. They're the only ones who teach the rape doctrine, as it's called. So if they kick somebody out, watch out. This happened a couple of years ago, maybe 8 years ago or so in the Carolinas. An ex-member killed his family as well. He had multiple wives. He was an ex-affiliate of GMS. Same thing with Austin Smith. So, yeah, he seemed to sort of bug out, as they would say. But he said he was doing it because of his beliefs. And here's the thing. Every single GMS video I watched that condemned me for talking about this, here's what they almost all said. First of all, they showed no empathy for the victims. Every now and then they showed a little bit of empathy for the girls. All they said was this: the timing was wrong. The best example is a guy that said, this would have been a righteous kill, but we're not in our own kingdom. And then he went on to say, we're not about murder. This is a GMS member video. We're about righteous killing, but we're not yet in our kingdom. My point is, Austin Smith's timing is wrong. They kept on saying what he did was not expedient, because there's an Old Testament KJV passage, basically, when Paul says, all things are lawful, but not all things are expedient, meaning this is righteous to kill your wife for this, but it's not expedient or wise, because then you're locked up in jail and you can't preach the truth. So really, their issue was the timing. And that shows their problem with not understanding the distinction between the old and new covenants. Because that a Christian community is supposed to deal with something like this is found in 1 Corinthians 5, where Paul says you excommunicate that guy who's sleeping with his father's wife, and you don't associate with him anymore. That's the solution. So it's not a capital punishment, it's exclusion from the community. That in the new covenant is the way someone's cut off. Now, according to 1 Corinthians 6, will that get judged unless it's under the blood by God? Yes. All of our sexual immorality gets judged unless it's covered by Jesus' blood, 1 Corinthians 6. But on this earth, the church, God's people, are not instructed to do anything like this. But the Israelites think that that they have the ability to do this. The timing is wrong, though. So it was directly connected to his belief. But they condemn it because the timing.
Okay. So just to be clear, everyone, as far as him killing his wife and kids and another person in his camp. Other people from who share his viewpoint. So just to be clear, this isn't all black Hebrew Israelites we're talking about. We're talking about people who are on the radical end, right?
Yes.
So they would say, yes, it would have been okay to kill them if we'd been in an appropriate time, namely when we're running things. But right now, he shouldn't have done it. He should have what? Waited?
Yeah. A perfect example is one inconsistency and flaw that we often point out in Hebrew Israelism is this. They'll say to a Christian, why don't you keep the law? And Christians usually end up trying to come up with some excuse, or they throw the Old Testament under the bus. Really, Christians are under the law, but the law is the law of Christ. It's described in the New Testament. And the law of Christ centers on a new sort of way of looking at things as you experience renewal through the Spirit. And that's why Galatians 5 says, here's the fruit of the Spirit. And then after that, it says, against things there is no such law. It's saying the way we remain lawful is we are under the law of Christ, which is a new covenant law, which is different than the shadow. It's the substance. And now we experience things in a different way because we have the fullness, which is a better covenant. So the problem is, instead of understanding the difference of the covenants and how God is operating now, we end up kind of but here's the thing. The Hebrew Israelites, they don't keep the law. As part of the law is not just doing these things, it's the judgments that are part of the law. Meaning, Israelites, not that they're Israelites, but ancient Israelites had to also execute judgments if a person did not keep the law. Perfect example, the person gathering sticks on the Sabbath that faced capital execution, capital punishment under the Old Covenant. That's right there in the scripture, I believe, in the book of. You look at that and you say, okay, that's part of what the covenant community was to do at that time. That was the right thing to do at that time, because that was Yahweh's instruction to the nation of Israel at that time. Well, I've asked Hebrew Israelites, so should that still be done? They'll say yes. And I say, so why aren't you doing it? And they'll say, well, we're not in our kingdom yet. And so it's all about when we get to be in our kingdom. They think that that's the kind of thing that's going to happen. And then they'll say things like, and at that time, no one will be able to stop us. And here's what's crazy. After this happened, David, I went on YouTube just for kicks, and I put Leviticus 20:10, because that's the scripture where capital punishment is prescribed for the Israelites. Those are clearly portrayed and caught in the act of adultery. You have to be caught in the act, actually. It's the whole process. But there, I Googled that in YouTube. I searched for it in YouTube. And a lot of the videos that popped up were Hebrew Israelite videos. For example, one guy who was a GMS member was reading a story about a guy who killed his wife he caught in the act of adultery on the East Coast a number of years back. And was saying how this was righteous what this guy did, but we can't because Esau supports adultery. That's white folks. And then another story from the Columbus GMS camp where they were talking about Leviticus 20:10 needing to be enacted. And when I first started following GMS Columbus, now again, GMS is a certain faction within Hebrew Israelism. One of their videos that caught me off guard was it was right after OJ had killed Nicole Brown Simpson. And in the video, the camp leader kept on saying to pedestrians, just wait until we come into our kingdom. We're going to be doing all the women like OJ did Nicole. We're going to be slitting these throats. And I was perplexed. So I asked my friend who knew more about it at the time. He said, oh, yeah, that's because they view Nicole as cheating on OJ in essence. So what happened to her was righteous. But that, she's of another nation anyway. But it shows all that happened was Austin enacted what they talk about all the time. And again, everyone listening, when I say they, I'm talking about one kind of Hebrew Israelite. There's Hebrew Israelism, and then under it, there's a banner called One West. Under One West are different camps. One of the worst One West camps is called GMS. A breakoff of GMS, Yahushai Servants in Phoenix, is the camp that we saw on the street and the camp that Austin Smith was a part of. They talk about doing this stuff. Yahushai Servants, GMS, This is how they operate. So yeah, this is not discordant with their theology, but it's a matter of timing.
Yeah, it as you're talking, it almost reminds me of the situation in Islam. Under Islam, there are various Sharia penalties, right? Like executing apostates and executing people for adultery, chopping the hands off of thieves, and so on. But in the West, if you ask a Muslim, "Hey, why don't you do that?" the response would be, "Well, we're not under Sharia yet, right? We have to wait until Islam expands to here and then takes over, and then we do those kinds of things. Then we do those kinds of things." But at the same time, even though that would be the sort of official Muslim position, that yes, that is the Sharia penalty, but we're not under Sharia yet. You still have people, even in the West, places like Canada and so on, here in the United States sometimes, Great Britain sometimes, you still have people doing like honor killings of their daughters. And the idea there is, my daughter is doing something bad. She's violating Islam. She's not taking it seriously. She's doing things that she's not supposed to. So we're going to execute her. And so the idea there is, it's not, they're not officially under Sharia, but some people just go and do it anyway. And so sounds kind of like that. I do have a quick question. And this is the topic's kind of heavy, right? We're talking about, kids being killed and stuff. So might want to intersperse it with some lighter moments, respond to some comments and stuff. But let me get this straight, Vocab. When I said, "Hey, we're recording Islamicize Me," why don't you take us to a Hebrew Israelite camp so we can get some video footage of us as Muslims messing around with some Hebrew Israelites. You took us to the first place you took us was this camp of these guys who had multiple killers on their team. Is that about right? And then we marched up and down the street in front of them. Was
only one killer.
Okay.
And again, to reiterate the gravity of the situation, he killed Ron Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
And all that I can discern, Ron Freeman, he had served in the United States military. His family described him as a patriot.
Mm-hmm.
Ron, when I was out there with them, was certainly a very large man. His fake Hebrew name they gave him was for iron. So he was a strong, but he seemed to have a gentle, calming spirit. Mm-hmm. And when his wife spoke about him, she had nothing but good things to say. He was a father of 8. I helped. Now I'm saying this because I want people to give to Deja Patterson's GoFundMe. And by God's grace, our little small viewership helped. We didn't do it ourselves or anything like that, but helped pay for Ron Freeman's memorial fund. Mm-hmm. We don't hate these folks, and we really care for their families especially. So Ron was murdered because of this. The leader of the camp, who was Austin's own brother, was injured, but not critically. I think he's already out, is my understanding. And I think the woman that he was with was injured as well. And I think she just moved out of ICU. And again, I say this with all due respect to the mourning and to those who are still struggling with the situation. But, I mean, I don't know if you remember, but John had been out there with me before.
Yeah.
I don't remember if John told you much about our experience with the camp, but he talked about how they had threatened to destroy our camera. They had threatened us in other ways. They were trying to rile up the crowd against us. And it was mainly the leader in
Mm-hmm.
Austin. Ron Freeman didn't do that. He was just kind of standing quietly by. He didn't necessarily stop it either. And then there was a guy whose name goes by Hebrew Israelites simply on YouTube, who is the reader. He was mildly provocative, mainly just by yelling. But Austin and the leader especially seemed to want to provoke or egg on the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And got in my face and started cursing me out and told me if I don't get the ESV Bible out of his face and start reading from a KJV, he was going to move me off the corner physically. Like he said a bunch of other stuff. He threatened me because I didn't have a KJV. I kid you not. And Alberto, if you remember them, the Urban Apologetics Instagram guy, he was there as a witness, and so was John McCrae, and John made a little reaction video about it. So this camp, even though it's a tragedy what happened to all of them, and this is not something they would condone now, this camp did perpetuate this kind of culture of violence. Mm-hmm. They carried weapons to camp. And that's one of the reasons why GMS kicked them out. GMS said, we're righteous men of the Lord. we don't carry weapons to camp, even though GMS are not righteous men of the Lord. They at least don't bring weapons to camp. Camp can function as a noun or a verb for them when they sort of, well, basically when they're going to camp, it's still, I guess, still a noun, but that's when they're preaching out on the street or whatever. When they go to camp, this group would carry weapons, and so they were packing even some sort of weapon, even when they were out there on that corner. But I mean, they were the closest one to us, and I already knew them, and so yeah. But it's a real tragedy, man. I mean, I think this is. I hate to say this, David, but I think it's going to happen more because this thing is growing, and you're going to get more sort of radicals out of it.
Similar situation to what we find in Islam. When Muslims make up 1 or 2% of the population, you don't see much violence. Pretty much every Muslim you'll talk to will say, no, Islam is all peace and tolerance. Once the percentage gets up to 10, 15, 20%, then you're not going to criticize Islam or bad things are going to happen to you. Once you hit 50%, then probably even before that, but once you hit 50%, certainly you're going to start seeing major turns to Islamic law. Hebrew Israelites, they make up a pretty small percentage of the population, but gosh, that's a group that I hadn't heard of 10 years ago, and now I see them everywhere, right? I mean, I would see them. I would see them when I would go down to Manhattan, just going down there to get something or going down to see a friend or something like this. And I see these guys out there standing around. All right, well, let's take some questions for a few minutes, and then, guys, I know a lot of people who come to my channel are usually interested in Islam or apologetic issues between Islam and Christianity, and so this is kind of a bit of a different topic, but we can talk specifically about Islamic terrorist attacks, and I'm sure I'll be talking about the recent terrorist attack in a live stream sometime in the next couple days. But since we have Vocab on here, and Vocab is the main apologist I know of who deals with the Hebrew Israelites, this is a group that you need to pay attention to. You need to be aware of what they teach, because you are going to run into these guys online. If you go to a city, you're going to see them on the corners. And for those of you who are in the African American community or other minorities, your kids are going to be targeted by this group. They're going to be people saying, "Hey, you need to become a Hebrew Israelite." So we'll take a few questions, and then we'll have Vocab talk about the Hebrew Israelites, give everyone a good introduction, and then we'll talk a bit more about the situation. For those of you who weren't tuned in at the beginning, we're talking about a situation where a man killed his wife and kids, and another man, and it's been reported that this was an attack by a Muslim. Vocab's one of the people pointing out that this is actually a Hebrew Israelite, and that apparently his cousin doesn't know a lot about what he believes, but you can see why people who don't know much about the differences between, people who don't know what the Hebrew Israelites are at all. If you saw them on the corner and the way they're dressed, you'd think, oh, Muslims, because Muslims are the only group that you're familiar with. So we want to be clear. If there is an Islamic terrorist attack that is carried out in the name of Islam, we want to draw attention to that and see whether it flows out of the teachings of Islam. But here, if we're talking about someone killing his family, we want to know, is this a random attack, or is it actually connected to the ideology? And based on what Vocab is saying, looks like it is connected to the ideology. All right, let's take a few comments here and questions. We're going to try and lighten things up, because that's some rough stuff, talking about kids getting killed and stuff like that. All right, so S. Mahmoud says, Dr. Wood and Vocab, love you both. It's off topic, but I'm an 80s baby and love the Karate Kid, so I want to get your take on Cobra Kai 1 and 2. Did you watch Cobra Kai, Vocab?
I watched the first season. I
didn't know the second season was up yet.
Yeah, it just came out.
Oh, okay. So we both watched the first season of Cobra Kai. So what did you think?
I thought it was going to be super cheesy, and then even though it had some morally objectionable content, I was amazed at how fun it was.
Yeah.
I've watched a couple of episodes from season 2. It's not as fun, but it's also not horrible. It's just okay.
Yeah. No, I thought I was like you. I wasn't expecting much out of it. I thought it was going to be lame and cheesy and just trying to you know, rekindle that feeling of the Karate Kid and Daniel as the bully trying to make a. I mean, not Daniel. Johnny as the bully, you know, trying to make a comeback, and Daniel having to stand up to him. But no, they totally flipped it around. They made you sympathetic towards Johnny, seeing things from his perspective, and then Daniel even starts looking like a jerk. And then what I thought was cool was kind of the like Johnny's sort of anti-social justice comments sort of throughout the series, right? Like he has no tolerance for victimhood and people whining about things, and so he would just blurt things out. But people are so fed up with a lot of the, you know, the social justice issues that that people kind of end up cheering for him whenever he's, you know, he tells people to basically quit whining. So yeah, I've only seen season 1. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, it was kind of funny how out of step they purposely made him, but it shows the difference in the 80s to now, I guess. And spoiler alert, there's another character, I think most of you know who it is, who comes in this season, and he's even worse when it comes to that.
Yeah, John Kreese, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I heard because I watched an interview with him, right, that they're also going to try and give more of a sympathetic take on him because, you know, he's this no mercy is for the weak type of guy, which you look at him and gosh, why is this guy such a psycho? But apparently at some point, and again, I didn't see the series, I just saw an interview with him, and he was talking about them giving a sort of sympathetic take on him, saying they went back to Vietnam. And so he was in Vietnam, even in the original series, there's pictures of him like that. But the idea is he was a soldier in Vietnam. Before he went to Vietnam, he was already like a karate champion and had victory after victory. But then he went to Vietnam where he wasn't allowed to be victorious. They were constantly had to hold back and couldn't just go out and win. And situations where a number of his friends were killed specifically because they weren't really allowed to fight back in certain situations. And so it changed him and he came back. No mercy. Enemy deserves no mercy. So anyway, looking forward to that. How many times are you going to play with your camera, man? Set it in your spot. Go ahead. Take your time.
People on here saying they can't hear me. I feel bad.
Well, that's because you're not on a good mic. I can turn you up a little bit. All right, go ahead. But leave it there and quit messing with it. All right, go ahead. Go ahead and test it out.
All right, this is I'm talking loud and here's how I sound.
All right, you're fine. We notified people, but I hear everything you're saying. So, yeah, a little choppy at times, but you'll be fine. Corinth here says, "How do I become a Jedi Master?"
You have to wait till December to watch The Rise of Skywalker to find that out now.
I would say you have to go to a long time ago in a galaxy far away. Something like that.
You've seen the trailer for the new Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
Looks better than Last Jedi to me, but you know.
Well, it does look like they're bringing... Well, they called it The Rise of Skywalker. So the question is what's her name, Rey? So are they saying Rey is a Skywalker, and so it's The Rise of Skywalker, or that Luke Skywalker is coming back? You had the Sidious, Darth Sidious, laughing at the end. So it looks like they're bringing back some people.
Hey, shout out to Sister Cherry Love. She's a fellow apologist.
Oh yeah,
Hebrew Israelites.
Yeah, she's been in. You've done some videos with her, right?
Yeah, she's awesome. She stays out in Chicago, and she knows about this stuff firsthand. Some of her family got caught up in it.
Mm-hmm.
And she has to deal with a lot of abuse. They especially dislike her because she's female. I think they might hate her more than they hate me because she's female.
Just because she's female? What is the... I guess we'll transition here in a moment, but we do have some Hebrew Israelites here in the comments section. And so as you describe their views, we can hopefully bring up some comments from them. But what would be the... I don't know how much all the different camps have in common, but what would be the most common Hebrew Israelite view of women?
The most common view It's difficult to call it mere patriarchy because a lot of times it is, I think, properly can be described as misogynistic.
Mm-hmm.
For example, almost all the camps teach polygyny, which is multiple wives for the male. IUIC does not. IUIC is more likely to speak of righteous sisters. But from women I know that have come out of IUIC, they seem to indicate behind the scenes it's not as great. And one example of that is IUIC tells people if your wife doesn't get with the program after 1 year, divorce her. So IUIC, even though they don't teach polygyny, and even though they're outwardly more respectful to women, IUIC, that's the purple and gold guys we confronted the other scene in Islamicized means a larger camp.
The dudes who totally punked out when we showed up as Muslims?
Yeah, they just, the guys that ignored us completely like we were ghosts.
I repeat, the ones who totally punked out, even when you were calling them cowards for not responding.
Yeah, they break up a lot of families because of that. Mm-hmm. Whereas GMS, they don't even really believe really in legal marriage by and large. Mm-hmm. Some of them do, but it's real iffy on that. And they teach that, your wife can be literally whoever because she's really there just to have sex with. Mm-hmm. So it's not required that she agree with the doctrine. Mm-hmm. As long as she's doing her part as a woman, basically. And then GMS teaches when you get to the kingdom, you can actually have sex slaves of women of all nations. Whereas
no wonder people confuse them with Muslims.
Yeah, well, again, This is GMS, the camp that Austin was kicked out of. They are the worst of the worst. So IUIC doesn't teach what I just said. They don't teach the rape doctrine either. Then there's ISUPK, for example. ISUPK does teach polygyny as well. And this is interesting. They get a lot of flack from the other Hebrew Israelite groups because they say in their doctrine that women are allowed to wear pants.
Cargo pants?
Yeah, like the rest, no. No, just women can wear pants, and so they get a lot of flack because the women are allowed to wear pants in ISUPK. Mm-hmm. Whereas the other ones, it's here, wear this dress, wear this head covering. Mm-hmm. And here's what's even, if you look up the video of Austin Smith's wife, she's always smiling, and she has her head covering. Yeah. It seems like she's trying to do what he wanted. In fact, some of the camp members talked about how he would play video games up until midnight. And one time when she was 8 months pregnant, these are from former camp members that associated with it. One time when she was 8 months pregnant, he sent her down the street to go get a beer for him, and she did it. Mm-hmm. Like, she seemed to be a very faithful, kind of dutiful wife, and it's just tragic. And, on no proof, no evidence, she's murdered 2 of the girls. One of them shot to death. Austin said he placed the little girl's body while she was still alive on top of the dead mother and then shot her in the back of the head. And the reason why he did it is said because she was also wicked and rebellious and had also broken laws like her mother. Mm-hmm. And then the little girl was crying, and so he said, "You're not to mourn for the death of the wicked, and so you deserve to die too."
Yeah, I saw that in the article.
He beat her with his fist and a baseball bat until she died, and then he let the youngest one live. She was under the bed crying, or quiet hiding, and he let her live. Now again,
I saw. He said something like that he let one live because she reminded him of him. Right? He said, "Well, she's like me. She reminds me of me, so I'll let her live."
Yeah. So this is tragic stuff. I mean, the thing is, even if these camps don't directly teach this, they do promote a culture of death. In fact, again, GMS has an old blogger who was a cartoonist. Mm-hmm. He was really talented, and he would do all these cartoons. And all the cartoons he would do were extremely graphic. Blood spurting out of people's heads, knives and swords and guns, sexually explicit. Well, about 2 years ago, me and some other apologist friends went through this blog site and said, look at all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And next day, GMS took down that blog site. It had been up for about a decade, and they took it down. Well, I recently had a guy search for it. It's on the Wayback Machine. We're going to come back out, and we're going to show the images that they've taken down, but they're archived on the internet, and say, look at the types of stuff GMS directly promotes and thinks is funny and makes graphic cartoon, and when I say graphic, I mean extremely graphic cartoon images of extremely violent acts. And again, this is not most of the camps, but Hebrew Israelism of the more radical variety seems to attract troubled young and middle-aged men who have a lot of frustrations and see this religion as sort of an excuse to get it out. It seems to attract some people who actually do seem troubled, not just spiritually, but sometimes mentally. It does seem to attract angry folks because a big part of their message is you're going to get revenge for slavery and oppression. And so
people in the comments section are putting out comments along similar lines. Tychicus here said both these cults pander to low self-esteem. So I think he's including Islam there as something that would pander to people with low self-esteem. And guys, what we talk when we talk about an ideology that is spreading by appealing to people of low self-esteem, the way to go about that would normally be to go to people who have self-esteem issues and to tell them, hey guys, you should be on top. You guys are supposed to be on top, right? And if we look at Islam, in the Quran, we find that Muslims are the best of peoples ever raised up for mankind. And unbelievers, Christians and Jews, are the worst of creatures. So you find that Muslims are superior to non-Muslims. So if you submit to Allah by obeying the commands of Muhammad, you show yourself to be one of the best of all peoples. And it doesn't really have anything to do with what you've done in the world, whether you've produced great achievements or something like that. You're just automatically one of the best of all peoples, and other people are beneath you. And that leads to things like the Islamic grooming gangs that prey upon 10, 11, 12-year-old girls in the UK because they have such contempt for them, right? It's, hey, I'm superior. You are garbage to my God. Therefore, I will treat you in this way. And ideologies that do that tell you, hey, regardless of how other people have looked upon you or problems in society, you join us and you're on top, man. You're on top. Everyone else is beneath you. You can see why that would appeal to people who have self-esteem issues.
Yeah, because this says your ethnicity is what makes you special and better automatically. There's a few people I want to point out in the live chat. Servant of Christ Ministries. Everybody look at Servant of Christ Ministries. His name is Jordan Ortiz. He's in the Atlanta area. I just did some stuff with him recently. He is an ex-Hebrew Israelite. He was in it since a young man, and when he left, he basically had to leave his whole family behind because he was actually raised in it. Most people kind of get converted into it. Jordan Ortiz, a.k.a. Servant of Christ Ministries, was raised in it, left, hasn't seen a lot of his family because he's been totally cut off. There's no in-between. It's difficult to have a good relationship if you leave this. And it's cost him a lot of pain and heartache, but I encourage everyone to subscribe to Jordan. He's very clear, rational, logical, biblical, just a great all-around gentleman. And he is a person who came out of it by God's grace. So people do come out of this. Also, I encourage people to subscribe to Sister Cherry, of course. I don't see everyone, but I do see a couple of street apologist people up in here. Shout out to Rox B and D New. And then lastly, What Do You Meme is in there. What's up, John McCrae? And he saw this camp firsthand. His experience was a lot more radical than ours because we just did some quick filming. John actually had an experience where they were threatening him. And one of the guys who was threatening John is one of the guys who got shot. And he would probably remember the guy with the glasses on who was next to the reader. John, if you're listening to this, I saw you there just a second ago. That is the guy, Austin, who killed one of his fellow camp members and injured the camp leader. The guy who had the do-rag on, Austin. And what's weird about Austin is he could be super radical towards me, like threaten me because I didn't have the KJV, but he's the only one who showed a personable side to me. What I mean is, one time I spent 6 hours out there with those guys, and Austin was laughing at my jokes at the end, saying, "You're a funny guy," except he was using a different word. And then when
he is pretty personable because your jokes aren't even that funny, and so if he's laughing, he's just being nice, basically.
He was laughing. Yeah. He was even getting my puns. I made a couple puns. He laughed at it, and then about 20 minutes later, he laughed again. He's like, still laughing at the same pun. And while I was talking about theology and stuff, they were paying attention, even though they were frustrated. He started looking over at the corner, and I was like, "What's up, bro?" He's like, "Damn, that church's chicken smells good."
Wow.
Because there's a church's chicken on the corner. He seemed the most personable out of all of them. That's what's so bizarre. Even though I mentioned he did threaten me, so I don't know, man. I don't know. It's not a good thing.
Yeah.
These camps are the worst side of Hebrew Israelism, and I understand every Hebrew Israelite's not in a camp, but the camps are a real problem. But the problem is the moderates a lot of times still look at them as their co-religionists and just kind of say, well, their tactics are bad, but they've got the right message as far as them being Hebrew Israelites, and that's what's most important. I feel like they're really too. I feel like a lot of the moderate Hebrew Israelites are too easy on the camps, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So anyway, I put up a couple comments just so people can see what to look for in the shout outs you gave there.
Subscribe to Cherry too.
And Vocab, you said you were trying to raise up some money to help someone who. What were you doing there? Repeat all that for the people here.
Dinu, can you guys get the Deja Patterson link? So. Again, Deja, by all accounts, seemed like a wonderful wife and a wonderful woman. It is a tragedy.
And who is this?
Deja is his wife that was murdered.
Yeah.
There's no evidence that anything he said was true. He just seemed to be paranoid.
And so what are you trying to raise funds for?
Well, they've got three, the mother, the grandmother, Deja's mom, and the daughter's grandmother, Cynthia. She's got to pay for 3 funerals.
That's a lot of money.
Deja's her own daughter.
And then 2 granddaughters.
7-year-old and a 5-year-old. I mean, this is really hard to talk about. So it's DASIAPATTERS. It's on GoFundMe.
Okay.
We help some money on my channel, but we're not as big as you. I love it if people went there and said, I'm giving because I'm a Christian, or I heard about this from Acts 17 Apologetics, or a Christian ministry told me about this. Something to show the love of Christ, because I think Cynthia...
And so they're not going to have any problem accepting money from Christians to help support these funerals.
No. Ron Freeman's family seemed very grateful. And it seems like both of the families, from what I can tell, David, I could be jumping to conclusions, both the families that are remaining, they seem like they're believers.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Which makes, because Hebrew Israelites usually pick off people that come out of some kind of experience.
You have the link there, Vocab?
No, I was hoping one of my folks would get it. Let me put it in the live chat. I'll do it right now.
Well, yeah, but if you send me an email, then I can type it in. I could type it into the comment section here. I mean the discussion. Okay. I mean the description. All right.
Just give me a second here.
Okay, so you get that up. I'll go ahead and respond to a quick comment here. L says that black supremacist cult have nothing to do with Israelites or Hebrews, so stop calling them that. Well, L, stop telling us what to do. That's the name of their group. So in order to identify them, we call them the Hebrew Israelites or the Black Hebrew Israelites. We understand that they are not actual Israelites, but that is the name of their group. Muslims are not people who actually submit to God, but we call them Muslims, which means those who submit, because that's how you identify them. That's what their name is. So stop whining about that. All right, so Vocab here, after you send that, and again, I'll go ahead and put that. I'll go ahead and put that in the description box once you send it. But other than that, we'll probably go another half hour. We don't want this to be too long, but we'll probably go another half hour, take a couple more questions along the way. But Vocab, if you wanted to give an introduction to Hebrew Israelites and basically why people should be concerned, right? Because there are people thinking, what? I don't know any Hebrew Israelites. I'm interested in Islam because you got jihad attacks. But guys, keep in mind, the Hebrew Israelites are a much smaller group than Muslims. But one, they are growing. They're growing rapidly. And two, it's a good idea to start responding to groups when they're smaller than when they're too big, right? For you to do anything about, right? So talking about the Hebrew Israelites, again, 10 years ago, I never heard of them. Now, and almost any time you go to a city, especially if you go out on like a Saturday, you see these guys standing out on various corners. And I see these guys online. These guys comment on my videos now, probably just because I associate with vocab now. But this happens. So it's better for people to learn about this group that specifically targets people of certain ethnic backgrounds. There are exceptions in other cases among some of the camps apparently, but if you are African American or another racial minority, these groups, if you're anywhere near a city, are going to be approaching your kids. So it's good to be aware of this. All right, vocab.
Well, the current wave of Hebrew Israelism we're talking about began in 1969.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, in the late 19th century, some people had some visions and revelations that told them that African Americans were actually the true ancient biblical Israelites. And if you understand something about the history a little bit, you can see how it went from sort of a metaphorical connection to some people's minds to a literal connection. You know, a lot of the paradigm that the slaves looked at to be freed from slavery were the Israelites under Egyptian bondage, and they saw their plight similar in America. And that's a good thing to see the Bible as advocating, you know, freedom and exodus out of slavery. But in some people's minds, it became literal, and so instead of being descendants of Africans, they're descendants of Israelites who happen to be living in Africa. And, you know, at first it kind of just started out not very popular, you know, but it grew a little bit right after World War I. That's sort of the second wave. And then it grew again in the 60s, and that's the ancestors ideologically to the groups I deal with. And then recently, in the past 10 years, with the YouTube advent, it's grown tremendously. We're talking exponential growth, and it's almost touching every city in America. It's going over into parts of Europe and Africa, down to Jamaica, the Bahamas. I mean, it's these groups are growing. They usually start small, but they're very consistent. They're out on the corner week after week. They may seem, you know, crazy to people, but the thing is, these answers they're giving are not only about intellectual problems. They're dealing with moral and emotional and indeed deep felt spiritual needs. And so whether you understand it or not, and I think the more you're familiar with the history and the plight and the situation of the background, I think you'll understand the appeal better. Whether you understand it or not is irrelevant. Whether you take their claims seriously or not is irrelevant. The fact is they're growing. And if you're a Christian who cares about truth and cares about our cities, then you in some way should be interested. It doesn't mean everyone needs to become apologists, but you should care about it. And so a great example of them growing is a couple of years ago, a video surfaced of a pastor, a Christian pastor in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, handing over his keys, literally handing them over to the ISUPK and saluting allegiance to the commanding General Yohana of the ISUPK. And that's sort of symbolic of what's happening in a lot of places where a lot of the younger guys from a lot of churches and ministries are disappearing. And you look out on the corner and see the Hebrew Israelites, it's a lot of the younger guys. And people may say, oh, well, who cares anyway? That's a bad attitude. But second of all, a lot of people they're getting are people who are dedicated and serious, and we should not underestimate them. To be honest, the average Hebrew Israelite, even the so-called, you know, off-the-hinge ones or whatever, they can twist most Christians into a doctrinal pretzel in a couple of minutes because they deal with obscure passages and they deal with certain interpretations of those passages most of us are not familiar with. And so they catch you off guard, they flatten you out, and then they have an open avenue for you to listen. And they know how to use the internet. Prolific on the internet. They're out at camp, they're going live, they're doing videos numerous times a week, and they have all these messages. And the main thesis is that if you're African American, it's so-called African American, you're descendant of the Israelites. But the groups I mainly deal with, they also teach if you're Hispanic or Native American, you're also a Hebrew Israelite. You belong on the 12 tribes chart.
All right,
Some of the
vocab. I had a quick question here that's based on a comment that is related to this question of various races. So Salmon Player apparently needs attention. He flips out when we talk about Islam, but then when we're not talking about Islam, he starts bringing up Islam. So Salmon Player 666. Wow, 666 says, David, try to keep up. In Islam, any race can become a Muslim. In Hebrew Israelites, a white man cannot become a Hebrew even if he wanted. His fate and the fate of his children is slavery. Big difference. I don't know why you're trying to correct me. I don't. What did I say? What did I say that has to do with any of that? But vocab, what is the deal? Because aren't there some white
Yes.
Hebrew Israelites? So
Yes.
okay.
So there's two ways that there's two main ways that happens.
Mm-hmm.
One way is some of the camps have a doctrine that in essence amounts to a doctrine they call confusion of faces.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is that because Israel's been dispersed, some of their lines have become diluted, and so they might actually look like white people. Like they might say, I thought I was Irish, but I realized I was an Israelite. And so they could look, like Everlast or Danny Boy from House of Pain.
Or like Vocab Malone.
Nah, bro. Or like David Wood. And so they will be in the camp, but they'll kind of make jokes like, oh, I'm light skinned, or they'll say that when they go into the kingdom, they'll get their melanin back, and that's mainly GMS that teaches that. Again, this is the GMS doctrine. So GMS is most likely to have guys who just look like white guys, and they'll be actually talking about white people or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Now,
so that's
one. Oh yeah. So that's one way. But one before I forget it here. Matter of fact, go ahead and finish that, and then I'll remember this. Go ahead.
The other way is the less militant type of groups have a theology that still has an ethnic hierarchy. So Hebrew Israelites are up here ethnically, and the other nations, because people always talk about white. No, it's Asians, it's Arabs, it's Indians from India, it's other people groups as well who are lower on the ethnic hierarchy of the Hebrew Israelite food chain. The other nations may be down here, but if they submit to the reality of what God is doing through the Hebrew Israelites and come underneath them for teaching, proper instruction, and all that, they can be received in either sort of in a kind, gentle servanthood way, or some of the camps teach, and some of the other less radical groups teach, actually as brothers and sisters. So they can be a Passover. They just have to recognize their place and their protocol. But they'll say, yeah, he's a Gentile, and he's grafted in, and he's still my brother or sister. A good example of that is GOCC, or Straightway Truth Ministries in Tennessee, which has a lot of ex-NFL players joining it. They will have people, and they won't say they're Israelites. They'll say they're spiritual Israel, though, and that they're grafted in, and we treat them as well as long as they understand the protocol for how things are done. And those groups are growing, too, as well. The thing is, though, that they're not as seen because they don't do the street corner thing. So I'm only going to deal with the street corner kinds of groups, so I end up talking about them. But the groups that are more rational are out there as well. So here's my point. If you're watching this and you have a friend who's getting involved with Hebrew Israelism, do not put everything I'm saying on them and assume they believe it. You must ask them. If you just start assuming and rambling, you're not going to go anywhere if they're not with those kinds of doctrines. So you really just need to have an open ear. Just find out where they are. And even if they are part of a radical group, okay, share the gospel with them. Show them the love of Christ. That doesn't mean they're unsavable. Jordan was with a pretty relatively radical group, and yet here he is. He's a Christian apologist. So so I just want to reiterate that. But those are the two main ways you can be white or of another nation. So like again and all that.
All right, I had the question I wanted to ask was, like, how does it work with, I don't know, percentages or something like this? Like, what if you're white but your great-great-grandfather was black or something like this? Is there a certain percentage that you would have to be, like your dad or
father?
You
Father is.
Okay.
So Bob Marley, to most of the groups, is considered a non-Israelite, an Edomite, because his father was white. I'm still getting on my mom's side, German on my dad's side. They make a big deal out of that because they say that proves I'm an Edomite. because if I was Sicilian on my dad's side, under their logic, the One West camps would say it's possible I'm a Hebrew Israelite, since Sicily was conquered by other
The Moors, yeah,
Africans who they would say were some Israelites. So they would say, hypothetically, you might be. So they think some Sicilians are actually Israelites, but they don't count me. So because they say, and then my behavior demonstrates I'm an Edomite, they'll say as well. By the way, I haven't explained it. Edomite is their slur biblically for a person who's white. They say they're of the seed of Esau. Yeah. So that's what they say. If you're Asian, you're a Moabite. And they have a whole list. If you're Arab, you're Ishmaelite. Anyway.
All right. Here's a question that is along those lines. Thought of the Day Radio said, why do the Israelites, I'm assuming he means the black Hebrew Israelites, blame their exile on white people? So why white people in particular? Because they're talking about something that happened a long time ago. Go ahead.
Two things about that. Number one is they believe in reincarnation. So they believe that the people responsible for the transatlantic slave trade are actually still here presently oppressing them.
Oh, so that's like you.
What do you mean? That's like me.
I mean, like you're one of the guys who did something to them centuries ago. You're the reincarnated him?
They think you've got to stay in the same ethnicity, but that's the way they get around the I wasn't there thing. Number two, they don't actually blame Arabs and Europeans necessarily. They actually blame themselves. So they go to Deuteronomy 28 and say, our people did not follow the laws, statutes, and commandments in this book. That's why we've inherited the curses of Deuteronomy 28. Specifically, verse 68 says we'll be carried away in ships. Didn't that happen in the transatlantic slave trade? Yes, it did. We're the people of this book. So they actually will say it's our fault. And then what they say is, so to now build up this nation that's supposed to be righteous and holy, and to get in touch with your lost roots and culture, you now keep the laws, statutes, and commandments of the old covenant. But at the same time, they'll talk about wicked Edomites or something. But under their schema, if you're an Edomite or an Ishmaelite, you don't really almost have any choice but to be wicked. It's by your nature. They don't even believe the Edomites and Ishmaelites, for example, sin, because they don't believe they were ever given the law. They're just doomed from jump. They're devils by nature, in essence. And so they kind of go back and forth between blaming and not, but really they'll say it's our fault, because when we're operating at our most high and most powerful, no nation on earth can stop us, because we're the chosen people and we're better than other people of here. Just look at our excellencies, and they'll point to what is understood to be black excellence. They'll talk about athletes and musicians and intellects, and they'll say this is proof for the people of this book. So it's quite a complex schema.
Wanted to respond to a quick comment here. Again, there are people who really want me to address Islam over here. Here's someone who's trying to correct me. It's always interesting how they try to correct me on something I've never said in my entire life. Suicidal Feeling said, dude, if you're a Muslim, you need another name, because that's... in Islam, you're not just allowed to commit suicide, even though your prophet was repeatedly suicidal, right? After he supposedly got his revelations in the cave, he thought he was demon-possessed, so he went and tried to hurl himself off a cliff. Later on, when the revelation stopped, after he became convinced that he was a prophet, he again went and tried to hurl himself off a cliff. So this is a guy who, anytime something is going wrong, runs out to throw himself off a cliff. And he's the pattern of conduct in Islam. But as a Muslim, you're not supposed to kill yourself. So anyway, if you're not supposed to do that and you call yourself Suicidal Feelings, it makes it sound like you're planning a suicide bomb. So get a new name, given what we had recently with all the suicide attacks. But he said, Wood's claim that women are going to hell because they are women is a lie. If a woman goes to hell, it's not because she's a woman, it's because of other reasons. Well, I didn't say that if you go to hell, it's because you're a woman. Show me where I've said that. Muhammad said that most of the inhabitants of hell are women, and he does say that it's connected to their nature. So women are stupid and immoral, and that's just the way they are, and so they end up in hell more. And if you'd like a source on that, I'll go ahead and read Sahih Muslim 142. Muhammad said, so if you're a Muslim here, and I don't see why you'd be trying to correct me if you weren't, Sahih Muslim 142, Muhammad said, O women folk, You should give charity and ask much forgiveness, for I saw you in bulk amongst the dwellers of hell. A wise lady among them said, Why is it, Messenger of Allah, that our folk are in bulk in hell? Upon this, the holy prophet observed, You curse too much and are ungrateful to your spouses. I have seen none lacking in common sense and failing in religion, but at the same time robbing the wisdom of the wise besides you. Upon this, the woman remarked, What is wrong with our common sense and with our religion? He, the holy prophet, observed, Your lack of common sense can be well judged from the fact that the evidence of 2 women is equal to 1 man. That is a proof of the lack of common sense. So Muhammad said that most of the inhabitants of hell were women. And why? Well, because they're immoral and stupid and they don't appreciate their husbands more. So this is connected somehow to the nature of women if they share this feature. So that's what I've claimed, but there I'm just repeating what your prophet has said. So if you have a problem with any of that, your problem was with your prophet, not with D-Dog Dizzle here. All right, vocab. We got about 15 minutes. You can either respond to some questions, or we can you can continue explaining that.
I just kicked out Patrick Rooney for making a bunch of racist comments.
Oh yeah, guys. If someone's making we'll give Muslims some leeway if they're making nasty comments, because we want them to stick around even if they make nasty comments. If they go too far, we'll block them. But yeah, people who are posting racist stuff, like for instance, like the Hebrew Israelites, we would want to cut them some slack just because we know where they would stand. But if someone's over here, especially someone who is claiming to be a Christian or something like that, posting racist stuff, yeah, block them.
Yeah, he was trying to make racist comments against and you know what, if you're in some way racist, don't get involved with the Hebrew Israelites, because what I mean is don't get involved in trying to correct them, because it doesn't help. It really doesn't help. And
racists don't help anything, just so you guys know.
Yeah, responding with racism with more racism doesn't do it. So I actually have empathy. Now the Hebrew Israelites don't believe me, but they don't really believe anything possibly is good that I would say. But I have empathy towards many Hebrew Israelites, and have a certain level of a sympathetic understanding of why aspects of the doctrine is attractive to them. Mm-hmm. I say that with all sincerity. I don't have to. I get a lot of it in the sense of I see certain aspects that it fulfills in a person's heart. But see, justice is a good impulse that is put there by God giving us his image, meaning we want justice. But when the sinful nature is unchecked, it turns good impulses such as desire for justice and turns them into sinful impulses and behaviors such as bloodlust, revenge. And Hebrew Israelism, a lot of it really caters to that. Mm-hmm. Because you just look at a lot of the doctrines, and it caters to a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And so I have empathy towards the plight. I do not have empathy towards the doctrine. If all Hebrew Israelism was saying is that, hey, we think these people are Israelites ethnically, if that was the beginning and the ending of the story, I would not be involved with this, because that's a minor claim. I would think it's by and large factually erroneous. Mm-hmm. However, that's not worth someone's time, effort, and energy to get involved in a whole apologetic venture, in my opinion. But it's when you say, in essence, Jesus Christ's sacrifice on the cross was not enough, therefore law keeping is essential to be in good with God. That's the Judaizing heresy. Galatians, that destroys the gospel. People buying into that is damaging to their soul. When you say that certain ethnic groups are above other ethnic groups by virtue of their ethnicity, and the Bible teaches that. No matter how far or how short you take that doctrine, meaning you can be grafted in as a lesser brother, basically, or you're going to be in hardcore slavery, it's so ethnic hierarchy, which also goes against the message portrayed in Scripture of a people that is every nation, tribe, and tongue. If you just look at Revelation 5, Revelation 3:28, it's that. And then almost all these groups denigrate the deity of Christ They have him some kind of created being or one God among many gods. They don't believe in the triune nature of God, and so they mess around with the Trinity. They deny the triune nature, or they come up with some other strange scheme, same thing with the Holy Spirit. So the doctrinal errors multiply, and when growing, it becomes a real problem. And I can handle it though. Kind of takes the threats and the comments in stride. If you're going to deal with this, you've got to be able to, I think, do that. And so yesterday we put out a video that is really hilarious. It's called The Kindness of the Hebrew Israelites. And it's a 10-minute little miniature movie. And all of this is all these clips of them wishing curses on me, that my children would die and that I'll get a spider bite, stuff like this. It's pretty funny though. But I don't, you got to have thick skin if you're going to deal with these guys, to my point as well. You got to have patience. Because if not, you're just going to create more problems. So if you're not that kind of person, just check it out from afar,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Vocab here. Someone said, Hebrew Israelites are not interested in conversation. And I'm sure that is true of some Hebrew Israelites. They want to, shout people down. But there are certainly Hebrew Israelites who are interested in conversation, I would say, because I've even seen them involved in public debates and so on. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if you look at the channel about 2 weeks ago when I was in Atlanta, I did a very peaceful, cordial sit down with one of the kind of main, intellectual advocates of Hebrew Israelism, Ron Shields, aka Divine Prospect. I sat down with him. We had a very peaceful, kind talk about all kinds of issues, and I think it was a good model. I'll do that with anyone, actually, no matter what they believe. So I don't cut people off because they believe or something so-called radical. We can have the same conversation. It's just, can you do it? Will you do it? A lot of them don't want to, but even the radical guys, sometimes you can break through. Now, I guess it wasn't enough, but that day that I was out there with the Yahushai servants in Phoenix or Israel, whatever they alternate, with Austin Smith himself, at the end of it, we had a good rapport, and I kind of had broken through some of their defenses. Now, the shields were back up next time I went out there, so it was kind of like starting over. But the point is that it's not impossible even with some of them, but I think to an extent, you got to be called to this. So I have people who support me just like people support you, but I think a lot of people that see what you do, just like people see what I do, they recognize they're probably not the right person for the job to be out there in the front line having these discussions and dialogues and all that. But some people are, and so we're a team. It's a team effort. But I don't think we should write anyone off. They're not interested in conversation. Yeah, maybe on the street, in that situation, you might not get very far. But a guy at your job, even a guy you meet on the internet who's a little more reasonable, you never know what the Lord will do. And again, Jordan Ortiz is in the live chat. Jonathan Soko just joined the live chat. We have 2 ex-Hebrew Israelites. Jonathan is also a regular and street apologist. He makes all the beats that I do for my channel. Jonathan is an ex-member of GOCC. So we have 2 ex-Hebrew Israelites, even right here in the chat. The point is that we can't write folks off. Oh, and the guy who edits the videos, Mike Apology, that you met, remember at the Doctrine for the Block that stayed over my house? Don't or anything like that. But he's there, and he's the new content manager for the channel. He does all the great editing. So my point is, though, that don't write anyone off. You don't know. You don't know who you're going to reach or how God's going to use. People probably would have said back in the day, Paul didn't want to have a conversation. And maybe he did, but maybe some of those conversations that he did have or that he heard, maybe the preaching of Stephen in Acts 7 maybe impacted him later when the Lord, boom, got him on Damascus. We just don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so guys, and I'm like Vocab. I'm not about to write anyone off here. I mean, keep in mind, I was a guy who actually wrote someone when I was in prison, and after I become a Christian, I started writing people that I had been mean to or something like that, and one of them was a Christian girl, and so I wrote her a letter from prison, and I got a letter back, and she said that she used to pray for me, but then she stopped because she figured she was wasting her time and that her time praying could be better spent praying for pretty much anyone besides me. So we know that there are people from really messed up backgrounds and messed up positions who come out of it. So yeah, guys, just because it's similar with Islam. You've got guys who will want to kill you for trying to share the gospel with Muslims. But you also have people like Nabil Qureshi who might spend years arguing with you, but will eventually leave Islam and become awesome Christians. So yeah, don't be writing people off here.
Yeah, we don't know. We think we know. And again, if you have hate in your heart or anger when you see some of these guys, doing what they're doing, you just wait until you get the patience. Until then, just because they have a stereotype of Christians that Christianity, in essence, is a white supremacist religion, that everybody who is of another nation in their mind secretly hates them, no matter how kind they are to them. These are paranoid suspicions they have, and people sometimes can play right into that with certain kind of behaviors. Now, this doesn't mean we're soft. Like, by God's grace, I go hard, but with a smile, meaning going hard, but not because I hate them or not, like we could still go. But it's, what the point is, what I'm saying is we've seen change happen. So yes, this thing is growing, but we're making a difference and an impact. And check it out, just like you, David, that the hardcore guys, they don't get at you and make the threats about your family and your children and all that. They don't do that unless you're being effective. Mm-hmm. If you're irrelevant, then they don't have anything to talk about. If it's bothering them because you're messing with their demonic religion, in essence, then they're going to come after you any way possible. And so we just recognize that. It's just part of being so, okay, okay.
Yeah, so I guess the same would go for the Hebrew Israelites and for what I call keyboard jihadis. That it sucks if people are threatening your family and your kids and things like that, but at the same time, they're confirming your effectiveness when they do that, right? So when someone sends a message to Vocab wishing horrible things to happen to him or to his kids, or when someone sends me a message saying that they're going to kill me, the real message is, we view you guys as a threat to our ideology, so we're going to try to intimidate you. So for all those keyboard jihadis and Hebrew Israelites who send threats and wish down curses, thanks for the encouragement.
Yep.
And one more comment along those lines, and then we'll go and wrap up. This is a similar comment to the one before. Gavin Knight said, they will not talk to me because I'm white, and all I can do is pray for them. I would say, prayer is awesome. So if you just want to pray for them and you don't believe you're the right person for the job to go talk to the Hebrew Israelites, because keep in mind, guys, I deal mostly with Muslims, sometimes with atheists. I don't deal a lot with other groups because, if I don't study their doctrines and things like that, then, I don't believe that I'm the right person to deal with that. I like focusing on Islam because I think that I am the right person for that. Namely, that when people are going to be threatening to murder you and stuff like that, it helps with someone from my background who's not going to be intimidated by that. So we have different places in the body of Christ. We're a body here. So if you just want to pray for people, that's awesome. But I don't believe it's the case that they simply won't talk to you because you're white. I think that there are at least some Hebrew Israelites you could just walk up to them and say, hey, I'm white. What is your position? And ask them questions and actually get them to explain their views. And you probably ask some questions on their views, why they think certain things. And when they start giving scriptures to justify their positions, you could challenge them on those things and say, I don't think you're interpreting that correctly. Or one good thing to do if you're ever worried, and you don't want to get into some big argument, you can keep it question-based, right? So you ask them a question, why do you believe this? And they say, oh, because of this verse. And you say, okay, well, what do you think about this other interpretation of that verse? And you can just ask questions without actually, trying to prove them wrong or something like that. But Vocab, what do you think about this? You interact with Hebrew Israelites all the time, and you're...
Yeah, just ignore comments about ethnicity. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you're too attached to any given ethnic identity and the Hebrew Israelites assault it, then it's going to rattle you or shake you up. But if you're a believer, praise God for whatever people group he's made you in. Acts 17, he sovereignly did that. But don't be too attached to that when you're dealing with them. Don't hold that as something they can hurt. Just let those fly off like water off a duck's back. What I mean is stick to the big issues at hand. Why are they saying that about an ethnic group? You know, they're going to be enslaved or exchanged. It's because of their doctrine. So get at the doctrine, not the so-called offensive comment. Go behind the comment. And so you just got to learn. And this is a Christian concept. Mm-hmm. We don't trade insult for insult. You know, we do our best to. And again, no one is saying I always do this. This is the goals that we aim for by God's grace, right? These are the goals we want to hit. So just bypass that, because God could use whoever, even if they think they don't want to talk to you. You show the character of Christ, and you show the truth. You show the truth of understanding the gospel. You show the truth of understanding who Jesus is. That can stick with them, because the word of God is sharper than any two-edged sword, powerful, able to cut to the core, severing the bone from the marrow. So, meaning the word of God is what wins the battle ultimately. You know, 2 Corinthians 10:3-5, we cast down arguments and strongholds that exalt themselves up against the knowledge of God. That's what we destroy. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal. And when you see all that, you realize them doing that, if you're holding your ethnicity or something else too close and it gets insulted and you get stuck on that, you're fighting the wrong battle. Instead, go to the gospel. Go to who God is. Stay centered on those and focus on those, because that is the core of the issues. If a person understands the most important thing about them is if they're in Christ or if they're only in Adam, Romans 5 right there, everybody. If they understand that, then once they see that their identity in union with Christ is key, they start to drop and shed away a lot of their bigoted dogma. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? But the first thing is that presupposition about what's most important. Is it being in Christ or is it being in Israel? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of Israelites can't really answer that question. They say they hold Christ, Jesus, as Messiah, but you say which is more important, they kind of like, or sometimes they'll say both, which is a horrible answer, or they'll say, I don't know, or they'll say Israelite is more important because that's the only way you can get to Christ. Things like that. So I'm just saying, just bypass that. Imagine that you're the running back, and here's the defender, and you see him. Don't go straight into him. Run right around him. You got a goal, and it's the gospel, and it's God. And just run right around him and deal with that instead, because they'll throw you off your game if you're too attached. Don't fall for it. Mm-hmm. So I think people can do this. They're just not used to dealing with Hebrew Israelites. Because if you say, well, guys, that's really racist. Give me that Romans 9. Mm-hmm. Jacob, I have loved. Esau, I have hated. Boom. God is a racist.
Bring it out.
Yeah, their interpretation is, well, God's a racist, so thank you very much. Mm-hmm. So get around that and find out what's their understanding of God. Mm-hmm. Get around that and understand what's their understanding of the gospel. That's where the problem areas lie, not in whatever name they call. Because they'll offend you. Mm-hmm. You know, I've been called every kind of racist name. Like, there's a video.
I've seen it.
Cherry was there actually live with me. We went downtown Chicago. 40 GMS members surrounding us, pretty much. Mm-hmm. The leader of the camp called me cracker as loud as he could, kind of sort of in my face, basically, like 7 times in a row. Cracker, cracker, cracker. Sherry was there. She remembers how this dude was this dude. And I just said, let's talk about the scriptures. You know what I'm saying? That's not going to, so we got to kind of have that kind of happy warrior mindset, that pit bull mentality. Mm-hmm. You grip on and you don't let go.
Yep. All right, well, we'll probably go ahead and wrap this up right now. We've been doing this for about an hour and a half. For those of you who came on recently, we started talking about a specific event that was attributed to Muslims, or a Muslim who killed several people, including several family members. But it turns out he was a Hebrew Israelite. Vocab knew him. So we wanted to clarify that. We don't want Islam to get blamed for things that had nothing to do with Islam. So talked a little bit about that, and then went into the Hebrew Israelite movement. And so Vocab gave us a lot of background there. If you want more, especially if you know that you're going to interact with Black Hebrew Israelites. The link to Vocab's channel is in the description box. You can subscribe there, and Vocab deals with this issue regularly. Also in the description box, there is a link to a GoFundMe for the family. So the grandmother of the little girls that were killed by this guy, she is not, she had nothing to do with that. She had nothing to do with the movement and so on. So Vocab invited everyone to go to the GoFundMe, contribute to the funerals for the little girls, and post something about, hey, I'm a Christian, but I know you're not responsible and that you didn't have anything to do with that, so I would like to contribute to the funeral of these little girls. And so invite everyone to do that. So that's about it, right, Vocab?
Yeah, I mean, maybe post like Romans 12:12, which says, more with those who are mourning. Mm-hmm. And remember, Cynthia Patterson, the grandma's got 2 little of her grandbabies to take care of the funeral, plus her daughter. And the Child Protective Services came in and took away the 3-year-old. Mm-hmm. So, that's not good. So during the most tragic, this little 3-year-old who was hiding under the bed, who just saw her dad kill her mom and her 2 sisters, she's in foster care somewhere. She needs to be with grandma, and so they need to get her back. And I saw the image of grandma. You can tell she's a sweet lady. So let them know you're a believer in some way. Mm-hmm. Just let them know, because they're about halfway there. It'd be great if we could, if we could cover it and take care of this. Mm-hmm. And this is very near and dear to my heart because it happened right on my block. And David, you can attest. You saw how close this camp was to my literal house. This is not some distant thing. I knew these guys. I'm not saying I went to pizza with them, but I spent multiple hours with them. This happened in my city where all the locations were mentioned. I know all these locations. Mm-hmm. Yep. So this is very relevant. And 4 people dead, 2 injured. So this is a big deal. We gotta stand against this doctrine, not with weapons of fleshly warfare, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So everyone, subscribe to Vocab's channel if you can. Head over to that GoFundMe page and help for these little girls' funerals. We got people here requesting a freestyle. Doesn't seem like the right mood. We're talking about little girls being killed by a Hebrew Israelite, not exactly the freestyling type of situation. But for those who follow my channel, lots more coming up, because there are more videos to make about the recent attack in Sri Lanka than I can make in a day. So many important topics to address, and Lord willing, I'll have at least 1 or 2 more videos out tomorrow on that topic, because there are a lot of topics to deal with there. All right, so thanks to Vocab for joining us here, and we'll have more soon. God bless everyone.
Peace out.